I want to play a clip here to illustrate the difference between a mainline moron that doesn't know the Bill of Rights and Constitution, Miss Teen South Carolina a few years ago, versus Miss Oklahoma, Morgan Elizabeth Woolard. The difference between an informed patriot woman and a dingbat educated in the public school system. Let's go to Miss Teen South Carolina first.
A fifth of Americans can't locate the U.S. on a world map. Why do you think this is?
I personally believe that U.S. Americans are unable to do so because some people out there in our nation don't have maps, and I believe that our education, like such as in South Africa and the Iraq, everywhere like such as, and I believe that they should, our education over here in the U.S. should help the U.S. or should help South Africa and should help the Iraq and the Asian countries, so we will be able to build up our future for our children.
Thank you very much, South Carolina.
Listen how she just mindlessly spewed a bunch of political correct words, help the children, help South Africa, you know, the struggle of the 80s or whatever that was the cause celeb. Now let's hear with the USA pageant last night, Miss Oklahoma getting a big cheer when she talked about states' rights. This is an intelligent woman versus the product of the New World Order. Here it is.
Oscar Nunez, your question, please.
Hello, Miss Oklahoma. How are you?
I'm doing so great. Thank you.
Alrighty. Arizona's new immigration statute authorizes law enforcement authorities to check the citizenship of anyone they believe may be in the country illegally. Now, listen to the question before you boo. Critics say this may amount to racial profiling. Do you think that this should be mandated by the state or by the federal government?
I'm a huge believer in states' rights. I think that's what's so wonderful about America. So I think it's perfectly fine for Arizona to create that law. And I am against illegal immigration, but I'm also against racial profiling. So I see both sides in this issue.
Thank you, Oklahoma.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so there you go. He was trying to cue them to boo her. Don't boo yet. And they didn't boo. They cheered her. And so, again, and they tried to misconstrue what this law does. It only allows after first contact, say with a drunk driver, if they're not a citizen to enforce the law. And then meanwhile, citizens have checkpoints. The feds are funding everywhere, Gary Franchi. And I never hear Barack Obama decrying that. I want equal protection under the law. But what an illustration, Gary.
Yeah, I mean, that was a beautiful answer. You know, I was cracking up when I heard the first girl, classic clip there. The second clip, though, just stellar response. Beautiful.
But that's the difference between a patriot and a dingbat who doesn't even know what planet she's on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, there's nothing better than an intelligent, beautiful woman. I love it. And more and more of them are standing up and taking action, Gary. When we come back, just for a quick segment, you'll be on with us. I'm going to get Webster Tarpley's take on what's happening in Bangkok, Thailand right now. Patriots or banker-funded uprising. People fighting back with slingshots against M16s. I tend to lean towards them, but we've got to burrow into exactly what's happening here with Gary Franchi, Webster Tarpley on for one segment. Gary Franchi will be right back in the next segment of Restore the Republic, the new film Don't Tread on Me, Rise of the Republic, other key news, and your phone calls. But for just 5 minutes, historian and good friend of mine, Webster Griffin Tarpley, pops in with us to give us his take on what's happening in Thailand. Webster.
Alex, I think Thailand is basically a mess, and here's what it is. You have these two parties, right? You have the red shirts who demand the return of the exiled Prime Minister Thaksin, and they've been engaging in some protests, but also some violence. Then you have the government, which is this guy Abhisit, representing the privileged classes, basically. You have to remember that in Thailand, the army is traditionally a big political power, and you have a monarchy. You have King Bhumibol, who is now pretty old, but he was quite a firm hand over quite a few decades. Now, Thaksin, the exiled guy that the red shirts want to bring back, when he was in power from 2001 to 2006, he did some good things. He got the International Monetary Fund out of the country, always good. He instituted a healthcare system. He also gave farmers a moratorium on debt. They got debt relief from this guy. The problem with this is that the red shirts of today seem to be less a force for a program in the way that you might conclude from what Thaksin did, more of a force for chaos than for anything specific. You've also got to put this in the context of China, right? Because they're close by. Thailand is one of the string of pearls, one of the countries that China would like to have good relations with. China wants stability. They want predictability. They're willing to compromise with some pretty ugly people.
So more Western encirclement of China.
I'm not sure. Look, it's a little bit more complicated. Here's what I would say right now. If you look at the Chinese coverage on Thailand, they don't seem to choose sides very clearly. What they do is deplore the fact that the society is breaking down, right? That democracy has failed, that you've got essentially the breakdown of the political system, and you're headed for chaos. And I would also stress the world economic depression in the background is fueling chaos in many countries. So with this, you might say that Thailand is on its way to being some kind of a permanently failed state. The Wall Street Journal of this morning wants the existing government to step down, to resign. So that's clear enough. But I think they want that with the idea that Thailand will descend into chaos, and that will become a problem for China, right? Chaos, refugees, and so forth. So, again, I think this is really, really a mess.
All right, we got about 2 minutes left. We haven't talked to you in about a week. The deterioration with the euro, with the different Germany now threatening to pull out or issue a new mark state. Where do you see that going?
Well, this is also chaos now, but this is very clear. This is the attack of the hedge funds. The hedge fund hyenas using credit default swap derivatives are continuing to attack Greece and the euro. And the thing that the Europeans have got to do is pull themselves together, kick out the U.S. hedge funds, ban hedge funds, or as close as they can to that, and do something like ban credit default swaps. Unless they do this, they will indeed collapse into chaos. And it won't be an orderly retreat from the euro. It'll be just a chaotic breakdown, and that's not good for anybody.
Well said. Are things deteriorating quickly, more quickly than they were last week, or any other developments on the economic front?
Well, you've got the continued pressure, right? And it's essentially a bunch of shorts, right? People are shorting the euro, and again, nowadays they don't do a sort of old-fashioned short. They do the credit default swap as a short, and they do that behind the screen of these hedge funds. You can be sure that the main zombie banks, J.P. Morgan and Bank of America and so forth, they're all up to their necks in this. And the irony is that Greece is more viable than the bankrupt zombie banks that are attacking Greece. And that came out with Iceland. Once they had said no, the books got opened, and it turned out it was the banks that were in trouble, and then Iceland didn't know the money. In the last minute, a little silly side note, but I want to correct it if it's wrong, because I got a few emails and saw a YouTube comment. I had read a book that you had written on history, and I had read that you had a doctorate in history, and so I called you Dr. Tarpley. Right.
And I'd read that in other books that were mentioning you. You'd never really talked about it, but you are a doctor, correct?
Yes, right. PhD in history from Catholic University of America, especially in specialty in the Venetian history of the 17th century. And if you want to go to WorldCat, the sort of World Library Catalog, you can see my work there. My
sure, and you're a
PhD
Fulbright scholar and have a bunch of other degrees and are a great scholar. I'm just tired of people making stuff up, because I knew you were had a doctorate of history.
The one thing is I have a doctorate in history, and that's it, right? That's the one that I have. I don't have any others.
Okay. Not a big issue. What matters is your predictions, the books you've written have all come true, and that's why we have you on here almost on a weekly basis. And all 4 of your books are available at Infowars.com. Webster, great having you on with us, Dr. Tarpley. All right, thank you so much. See, folks, I didn't make it up, okay? I was reading another history book that was quoting Dr. Tarpley in it and mentioned his degree in Venetian banking history.